advertising as a business is very challenging. It's stressful. It's deadline oriented, but it's also, and I think it's one of the reasons it appealed to me, is that you develop an insight into human behavior, consumer behavior, and somehow I had that insight. Plus, I could write. When you're a creative director, you still create some, but more your responsibility is supervising people and helping them. It's kind of like being an editor. People would bring me their ideas, and I'd have to guide them and tell them how to make it better, or sometimes I'd have to fire people and stuff like that if they weren't performing, and so it was more of my job was to get the creative done and done well. I mean, the old agency thing is like the creative people are making the cars, and the account people have to be out there finding customers and selling them.
Mhm.
But we were the product. I mean, that's what advertising is really, it's intellectual capital. It's not a lot of hard goods, anything like that, but it's collective intellectual capital. And so I'd walk around and, look over people's shoulders and they'd say, "What do you think, John?" And I'd say, it's good, but it's lacking this or that, or the copy's too long, you got to shorten it, or the headline doesn't make any sense to me, or like that. So that was really what the job was supervising other creative people while contributing contributing ideas that they would develop, and then dealing a lot with the client. Let's say a typical day in Atlanta, because that's where the client was. I'd walk in and there'd be, I had an assistant, a secretary, she's great, and she'd say, "Here's, such, Joe Smith needs to talk to you, Elaine needs to talk to you, the art director, they want to show you some ideas." And so people would kind of line up outside my door unless I went and saw them and show me their work. And then in between that, I'd sit with the head of account services, Scott, and Paulette, who's head of research, and would have to come up with the right strategic thing. You produce commercial, but the tone has to fit into a very narrow set of parameters. Being able to write economically, and you got to have a knack for coming up with conceptual ideas that are visual. I mean, even writers, you got to think visually. I was always think visually. The Wells Fargo Stagecoach is a visual vehicle, quote unquote. And then once you have that concept, then it's easy to write around it. Then once you see it on the air, you go, "Wow, I did that." And 50 million people are seeing it too, which is a pretty good rush, Yeah, I mean, to be a creative director, to leadership skills, people had to like you, So there were some who were just geniuses that nobody could stand, but they were so good that they could get away with it. But mostly you have to be able to work well with people, and copywriters they sort of sprout up in the field, or they crawl through the heating or something to get into the business. Finally, after bartending for a while and everything, my dad suggested maybe I go see this friend of his. My dad said, "Why don't you go see Mark Pope? Set you up with him. Maybe he's got something. It's not advertising, but So I go in all dressed to the nines. It's wintertime. Had on a wool, plaid wool coat and tie. And he says, "Well, I think we can put you to work. Training program, and then you can get in sales." So okay, great. They've made me a salesman. And was there late one night about 8 o'clock, just going over some paperwork or something, and all the other salesmen had left. And he says, "Mattingly, are you out there?" I said, "Yeah, I'm here, Odell." He said, "Well, there's some drunk woman on the phone." I said, I'll take the call." So I pick up the phone, and she Tell you what, if you come over here first thing tomorrow morning, I've got a job running over 1 million brochures that had to be turned around in like 4 days or something, which was crazy. But I went and saw her anyway, and sure enough, she had the whole European Health Spas accounts, national account, and they did that million brochures like every week or two. And but I said, we can't take this job unless you give me half the money up front. And she said, okay, how much is it? And I forgot exactly, but it was like 80 grand or something. And she said, okay. And she pulled out her company check, wrote me a check for 80 grand. She started giving me a lot of printing. She knew that I was interested in writing and advertising. And it was an ad agency. And so after about 6 months, she said, I'll tell you what, Matt, she called me Matt. Why don't you come to work for me? You can have a print production and I'll give you some writing assignments too. And I said, well, there's my break. And so I went to work for her, and it was like, I'm not exaggerating, it was like $500 a month. That was the break I've been looking for. Usually we did all the ads we did were these things like you just take a picture of a model, a leotard, $30 off, join now, those kind of retail kind of ads. But then Peter decided he wanted to do a campaign that was much more serious minded. And so a guy who's like the godfather of advertising in Atlanta, his name's Don Gill, he happened to be in between jobs right then. He'd been a creative director at another big agency called Little, and he was waiting to go to work for Y&R. He was the creative director there, and so he freelanced and came in, and I worked with him, and we did 15 ads, and they won all these awards and stuff like that. And he said, as soon as I start at Y&R, which they're cranking up right now, I'm going to call you and hire you. And sure enough, he did. He went to Y&R, and about 2 days later, phone rings. He says, "You ready to come over and work for me?" And so I said, "Okay." So I was working for the man, in Atlanta at the time. I had a portfolio then, and I went over to McCann Erickson, which was the biggest shop in town, and the creative director there looked at my portfolio and said, "I want to hire you." So I went to work there and worked with some really good people there. Then they fired that creative director. He called me up and said, "You want to come out to San Francisco?" And offered me more money and everything like that. And I said, "Yeah, it was hard to up and leave my family and stuff." But by the end of my career, I was an executive vice president, executive creative director for the whole Bell South account, which is a $350 million account. So if you nationalize that, it'd be like $1 billion account. It's a huge account, a regional account. So I had to take it and enjoyed it. By then, I was more of a supervisor than, still writing and creating, but by then it was really a matter of just supervising other creative people, and they would bring their ideas to me, and I'd have to say yay or nay, or suggest things, or throw out ideas for them to develop, and like that. And then I made most of the presentations. I had a good relationship with the client, and that's where I got to where I was.